What's going on, everyone? Lauren Sisler here, ESPN. Cole Cubelic, also with ESPN with the GMAC show in the morning, 7 to 10 a.m. You can catch him on WJOX. We are rolling into week 6 of the college football season, and Auburn's got a big one on the road against Georgia, so we're going to break this thing down as we go head to head. All right, I just want to say thank you all for watching as you guys tune in week to week for this segment. We appreciate you, of course, appreciate our sponsor, Alabama Cattlemen's Association, rolling with us all season long. And Cole, off the top, obviously Auburn taking a tough loss to LSU at home, 21-17, after obviously getting up 17-0, blowing a 17-point lead. Tough to see. And then the headlines. They keep rolling out. Should Harsin be fired? Everyone's got an opinion. But Cole, I want your opinion as someone that's been there. You're obviously rooted into the program, and you've actually been through it before and kind of know what it's like to go through coaching changes in your career. So what is your take on this, and how does this affect the program internally?
Well, there's no positive effects, and I understand people have jobs to do, so I'm not going to be mad at a media member who wants to share their opinion and say that they think that it might be time or that's what they believe should happen. The repetitive nature of it, I do think is maybe unnecessary. And then obviously fans can have their opinions as well. If you think somebody else would do a better job, or if you just don't like Bryan Harsin, that's your opinion. But when you come out and say that you no longer support the coach, you're not going to give the coach any support, to me that's it. The coach coaches the players. The coach leads the team. If you say, I don't support the coach, I'm not going to go to the games, not going to spend money, not going to talk about him, whatever that is, then to me you don't support the team. That's my opinion. That's the way that I see it. When you look at how it impacts things, not only a coaching change, I've been through a coaching change in season. And it's ugly, it's bad, it's miserable. And for a lot of reasons that I don't think fans quite understand. And I don't think fans quite understand the impact of some of the things that you say have. You can say that you don't like a guy, he's not doing a good enough job, you want that guy removed right now, but you don't understand that the other lives that impacts. And I'm not just talking about players, but it is players as well. There's assistant coaches, there's their families, there's people in administration. What happens when a coach is fired in the middle of the season? And I understand the calendar has a lot to do with this now. The early signing period has a lot to do with it. You want to try to get out ahead of that. Obviously, people are trying to get out ahead of trying to find a new coach. That's obviously a real part of it as well. But what happens is when a coach is fired mid-season, Lauren, most of the assistants, and I'm not pointing fingers or blaming anyone because actually I understand it and I get it, because you're putting them in a bad spot all of a sudden. They're 1 foot out the door. They're trying to go take care of their family. They have a wife, they have kids. They're trying to find out what's going to be next because they know good and well I'm probably out as well. They're not going to keep me here. I don't know the next person, don't know who the next person is, don't know a lot of people in administration, don't even know where the leadership is right now. If there are big decisions to be made, who's making them? Is Rich McGlynn making those? I don't know. Is Christopher Smith making those? I don't know who's making those decisions. So I never like a coach to get fired mid-season. It's understandable. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it puts those kids in a pretty bad situation. There's no part of it that's fun. There's no part of it that's good. Listen, my offensive line coach when Terry Bowden got fired was not a fun guy to play for. And it was something we probably should have been happy about. Because one of the first conversations Bill Oliver had with him was, you're going to knock this crap out. It's not going to be like this anymore. Our practice time was almost cut in half because Bill Oliver didn't believe in practicing as long as Terry Bowden did. We should have been happy about that, but we weren't. Because it was constant distraction, constant discussion about other things rather than how can I be a better football player? How can we be a better offensive line? How can we be a better offense? How can we be a better team? All that almost went away. So just because your opinion is that you don't like a guy, or you don't like what a guy's doing, or you don't think this is going to work long term, be careful about what your opinion may affect because it impacts a lot more people than you and what you specifically want. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost. So do I think something needs to happen right now? No, I don't. Do I think the future's bright and things are going to work itself out? Absolutely not. I'm not dumb enough to sit here and think that. But to constantly poke and prod as to, I want this now, this needs to happen now, I want my way right this second, when things just haven't gone well the last couple of weeks, I would just kind of give a little caution as to the bigger picture as to what all of that entails.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, big picture, right? Auburn is now 3-2 on the season, and I think, to your point, you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of things behind closed doors. You're dealing with over 100 players that are in a locker room that have to go to work every day, and whatever is looming over them in terms of the distractions, they've still got to walk in that locker room. And I think that when you have all this outside noise, it sucks the fun out of things. It sucks the joy out of things.
The thing for me, and kind of following up with what you're saying is, if that happens and if it gets there, there's going to be plenty of time to talk about all that.
Right.
There'll be plenty of time to talk about who the next coach can be, who's a good fit, would he take it, is it a better job? No, that doesn't all have to happen right now.
Right now, right.
And I think the fast forwarding process of we need to talk about all of this right this second. When there are games to be played, there's a season to be had, there's development to take place, there are adjustments to be made, and nobody wants to wait on any of that. Nobody wants to give any of that a chance. And I'm not even talking about the head coach. I'm talking about the right tackle. I'm talking about a defensive end. I'm talking about a safety, a wide receiver. All of that can continue to morph and change, and nobody wants to wait on that. They just want their way right now. So they'll probably get their way at some point because it feels like that's where it's headed, but my lack of understanding is why that needs to be fast-forwarded and brought to the surface every single day.
Good point. All right, let's get into the matchup. Obviously, again, a heartbreaking loss for this Auburn football team who had LSU on the hooks early. And I think one of the big key areas, and Harsin addressed it, is momentum. Not being able to adhere to some of that momentum, creating that momentum shift, capitalizing on that momentum. And of course, you start with the quarterback position. TJ Finley still questionable. We don't know if we'll see him against Georgia on the road. Robbie Ashford is your guy. He gets the nod. He's going to start things out. My question for you is, as you get ready to go up against this Georgia team on the road, what do you do to keep this offense intact and do things that really sort of highlights what the personnel is that you have to help this offense have some success?
I think the first thing I do is I stay with Robbie Ashford. TJ Finley gives you some differences in other places. Maybe it's the understanding of the offense, understanding of protection, understanding of the checks, getting through progressions. I get it, but there was no point in this season where TJ Finley presented that it was that much further ahead as far as being able to help Auburn win games than what Robbie Ashford has done. And now you're taking a young player who you've built a few things for, you've made a few adjustments for, and you're just going to bench him again. I ride with Robbie Ashford. He is a great north and south runner. You have to get him going north and south more often. We've said it every episode. I'll say it again. Moore, Tank, Bigsby. But that brings me to a different point that I wanted to address. A lot of people asking me, oh, the offense got too cute. Oh, the trickeration is, oh, why do you turn to that? Their offenses have always had a baseline that when things went to hell in a handbasket, they could say, let's get back to that. Maybe it was the quick game. Maybe it was a run game. This offense doesn't really have a baseline. And that's not necessarily from a scheme perspective. It's from an execution and an ability perspective. They don't have the guys up front on the offensive line to be able to push people around or to be able to consistently outmaneuver more numbers in the box and run the stretch play. They don't have that. 17 of 19 carries Tank Bigsby against Missouri was touched at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. You can't build around that. If you're going to build around something, it has to be a little bit successful. They don't have a lot of receivers that separate enough. They don't have any racer at receiver that you can just say, if he's singled up, by God, throw the 50-50 ball, throw the back shoulder fade, throw the goal ball, and let him go attack it. They don't have that guy. And I understand there are people that are going to say, well, it was their job to go get the players to do that. It was their job to be able to coach them up and be that. Fine. If that's where you want to live, live there. But the reality is they don't have those guys to be able to get that. So what do? You create. You get creative. You find ways to generate different things, put people in different places, and give Robbie Ashford credit. I think the majority of the explosive plays came when he ad-libbed. Scramble drill was incredible for him. Now, that can't be a play that you draw up. You just got to find ways to move the ball. And if what you have worked through spring ball and fall camp that you thought you were going to be able to live and die on are not working, what do you want them to do? Just keep running it? Just keep banging your head against the wall? You have to come up with other things. I know both sides of it. I see both sides of it. But have an understanding that there is no baseline. There is no trunk of the tree that is this offense that the limbs are sprouting off of. It's going to have to be change-ups, curve balls, off-speed pitches, knuckleballs, spit balls, ephus pitches, whatever. You got to come up with an entire arsenal. This is not John Smoltz going in saying, hit my fastball, buddy, good luck, here it comes. They don't have that. They don't have that pitch, so it's going to have to be a lot of different things to try to create any sort of advantage that they can.
And I think creating that advantage is going to be key against this Georgia defense. This Georgia team has not been on its A game, so to speak, these last few weeks. Looking at Stetson Bennett, he's a quarterback that kind of has started out slow, obviously picks up momentum in the second half. I think Georgia got the job done against Missouri when it counted most, but it's still a young team. I was listening to your radio show coming in, just talking about that Georgia team being a little bit immature, being a team that really still has some things to figure out, obviously, to adhere to that national championship level. They've really had to lean into the run game with McIntosh back there, Kendall Milton, Edwards as well. And so Auburn has truly got to be able to figure out things on defense and obviously get pressure on the quarterback and, create some significant plays and maybe those momentum plays that Harsin has talked about in creating some turnovers and being able to turn those into points.
It's going to be tough. I think the really bad news for Auburn is that in the second half, because of the penetration that the Missouri defensive line was getting early, they decided to almost go full gap scheme. And they made a nice living off that in the second half. They're not a great group up front to just mow you off the ball. When you see them, you feel like they would be because they have one of the most beautiful offensive lines in college football. I mean, they got a couple of guys that you look at and you say, God made a tackle when he made that man right there. Like it's what it looks like. But they haven't really been able to impose their will that way just yet. Auburn needs Cam Riley back. Losing Eku Leota is going to be a big loss because Derek Hall's been great. Well, that might allow teams to pay a little more attention to Derek and what he's been doing, not having as dangerous of a threat on the opposite side. And the middle of that defense has been displaced often. That can't happen. And when that continues to happen, especially against a team that's going to go gap scheme, you're going to be in trouble because there's going to be a lot of space. The good news for Auburn with this Georgia offense, one, they don't have the receivers that really separate.
Right.
Their receivers are not super explosive. Their backs are not home run hitters. It's not Carnell Williams. That's not what they have in the backfield. They're more of the Ben Tate, Rudy Johnson type running backs that can just grind you and pound you. Brock Bowers, a tight end, is their most explosive weapon. You just have to hope you can neutralize him and get him to the ground when he does touch the football. And there have also been instances where Georgia has not force-fed him the football. So you kind of hope for that. But it's not a great matchup. I think offensively, you try to take advantage of a young front seven. They don't communicate as well as the group did last year. They're not as daunting up front as they were last year. I think there are some yards to be had against that group, but you must continue to change and morph the presentation of what you do offensively. Auburn, Bryan Harsin, Eric Kiesau, they've got to continue changing the picture of what they want to do offensively.
And speaking on Georgia getting to play at home for a 2:30 kickoff on CBS, is this a football team that's going to kind of come back out for blood and say, all right, we're going to empty out the tank here? And if that's the case, I think this Auburn team is going to have its hands full, but I think there are points to be had. So I'm not going to go with necessarily a high-scoring game. I've got Georgia winning this one 38-17. Right now they're a 4-touchdown favorite, but 38-17 is what I got.
38 is not high-scoring?
I mean, I guess it is kind of high-scoring, but not super high-scoring.
The emptying out the tank thing's interesting, too, because there's a lot of folks that I've heard say it feels like Auburn's thrown everything they have out in the first half, and then they have nowhere to go in the second half, which is just not true. Again, it goes back to the presentation. Somebody called in my radio show this week and said, well, they ran the same play 6 times, and then the 6th time it didn't work. We've run the same play 16 times in a game. You just change the presentation of how it looks, add a motion, do it out of a different formation, do it with different personnel grouping. You can keep running the same plays over and over. You just change the way that it looks to give you that advantage. So there is no tank to be saved. Don't save anything in the tank. Put it all out on the line as soon as you can if it's going to be successful and figure it out from there. Mm-hmm. I do think that, you take the turnovers away last week. And, I have people saying that, perfect preparation makes perfect performance, whatever it is. You think Bryan Harsin and company are preparing to drop a zone read mesh? Did they prepare Coy Moore to throw a hook shot to Harold Perkins for an interception? Nobody's preparing for that. Cut down on the mistakes, play a cleaner game. If you don't turn the ball over, there are things that can happen and Auburn can be in this game. Georgia has shown they're not quite a mature football team yet. There are holes in both the offense and defense, and they're banged up to the point that there are certain aspects that you can take advantage of. Change the tempo, change the pace that you roll with on offense. Do different things to give you that advantage. I don't think Georgia gets to 38. I'll go 28-10. I think Georgia gets this win.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.